Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back to the whiteboard. This week, I want to talk about something that I've seen repeatedly from a few clients that we are talking to, coming to us from, either doing things in-house or coming from us from agencies. And there is a really concerning trend that I'm seeing, which is a lot of brands are doing A/B tests completely wrong. Let me break down where I think they're going wrong and how you can fix it. So let's start with what most of them are doing. It's basically a pretty standard, they change usually like 3 or 4 kind of hidden elements, like for instance, a header together, image, copy, plus a button, right? And we have 2 variants here. We have the original, we have the new one. The new one raises some metric we're tracking, in this case like conversion rate, by about 10%. Everybody thinks this is a fantastic thing, and sure, if you can raise conversion rate 10%, great job, potentially. And what they're doing is they're repeating these tests, maybe with different elements, maybe with different combinations, maybe different parts of the page, but they're just doing a series of tests over 6 months, a year. And maybe at the end of it, they're ending up at, say, a 2.5% conversion rate. You can see exactly how you'd get here. You started about 2%, the internet average, a couple tests lifted about 10%, you've got a couple inconclusive tests here, a couple minor lifts, you end up at 2.51%. That's, a 25.1% improvement over 6 tests, about 4.2%, 4.3% improvement per test. Not terrible. But this takes 6 months to a year to do. And all you did was go from 2 to 2.51% in a year and spent a small fortune doing this because you're paying that CRO agency, you're paying for the tools. It's the amount that you've potentially gotten from this 50%, 50 basis points improvement in conversion rate versus the cost might not even work out mathematically. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that they almost never control for the role of novelty. And what do I mean by that? I mean, when you chart just about any CRO initiative, what you'll see is that when you introduce a new winner, right? You run this A/B test, you chart a winner, we declare the winner about here. That's when statistical significance is usually reached. But if you extrapolate this over a sufficient amount of time, 2, 3, 4 sales cycles, what you'll see is the performance actually deteriorates. It reverts to the mean over time. But we declared the winner here, so we think this is what's going to persist. The reality is something like this is what is actually go forward sustainable. And we have never discounted the performance of the winner to what it's likely to be in the future. So you've claimed a 10% improvement, but in reality, what you get, maybe a 2 or 3% improvement. Still, progress is progress, but 3% is not 10%. This third piece, the most damaging piece, especially for small brands or starting brands or brands that are not behemoths. So I'm not saying that Ridge Wallets is a small company. They're not. But they're also not Nike, at least not yet. Even those companies have this problem, which is every incremental, A/B test, CRO initiative is designed to get you to the maximum that you are currently on. What I mean by that is if you're climbing up this mountain here, incremental CRO will get you closer and closer to the top of this mountain. That's a fantastic thing. But if your goal is to get to the top of the tallest mountain in the range, you're not going to get there going little by little because it is going to push you just to this very tippy top over here. To get to the top of this mountain, you actually have to leave this mountain altogether. And you got to go wander over here, go up and down a hill, and get to this mountain, and then get all the way up. That's a different challenge. You will not get to a new mountain using incremental tactics. This is a well-known problem, not just in CRO, but in mathematics generally, which is why optimization algorithms include forced detours, which means that the algorithm is actually forcing itself to take what it believes are suboptimal routes just to avoid continuously optimizing only for a local maxima. So this approach can be great. If you are Amazon, ticking up just a couple basis points in conversion rate is a fantastic thing. Please go forth, go ahead, optimize those carts. But if you are a brand or a retailer, a local services business, an e-com store, a senior living community, a financial platform, and you're trying to grow, you are not going to incrementally grow yourself to the scale you want to be at in a time frame and for a cost that is likely reasonable to you. What you need to do is this. Take bigger swings. First things first. What you'll notice here, these are two radically different pages. This is not a standard test. This is not a statistically valid test. This is not a scientifically defensible test. But you must acknowledge one thing at the start. You are either running tests to grow your business or you are running tests to publish a paper. And spoiler alert, most people who are publishing papers aren't making the kind of money that people who run businesses are. So if your goal is, I want to grow my business, I want to grow my client's account, I want to help this brand scale, then who cares about publishing something with a p-value of 0.05? Certainly not you. So, not statistically defensible, and who cares? Number two, these are intentionally big changes, big swings, because those big swings are what take you from this mountain to this mountain and this mountain to this mountain, so that you can find the one that actually is the tallest. But the big piece of this is what gives you the opportunity to make an outsized impact with a single swing. If we use baseball as an analogy, we are going for home runs and grand slams. And if that means we strike out a few times, we strike out a few times. Your downside is capped. Your upside is not, right? That is the fundamental truth of big swing testing. Because worse comes to worse, you run a big swing test and it completely bombs. Okay, you revert back to what you currently had and we set up another big swing test. Is that annoying? Yes, but it is candidly no different than this. Because if this test bombs, you're just gonna revert back to this one and do it all over again. The only change is we are changing everything. We are making big changes with the goal of getting a big payoff. Let me illustrate this with a brand that actually said, you know what, let's do the math and let's see if it's right. So this is a small brand. It was an e-commerce business. They were doing about $1 million a year. Founder-owned, small business, competitive-ish niche. They had about a 2% conversion rate and $100 AOV. I've anonymized these numbers ever so slightly so people can't figure out who they are, but this is the gist. It is pretty close to accurate. And when they were doing CRO with somebody who does CRO, what they found was they were able to get, shocker, close to these numbers over a period of 6 months. They went from 2% conversion rate to about 2.5% conversion rate. They were driving across all their sources about 41,000 visits per month across paid, organic, email, referral, et cetera. And that traffic mix was mostly consistent. That got them to about $83,000 per month in revenue, about $1 million a year business. It actually was a little higher because BFCM and the holidays accounts for much more than this. And after the 6 months of CRO and many thousands of dollars spent for this, traffic about the same, conversion rate popped up about 25% to 2.51 from 2, and revenue jumped commensurately. So they improved the conversion rate while holding AOV steady, relatively common in smaller stores with smaller SKU counts. There's just only so many ways you can buy stuff. 104K. That's a 25% improvement in revenue. That's pretty good, right? But remember, it's an e-com store, so revenue is not profit. By the time you back out the differences here in contribution, or in COGS, in advertising, et cetera, customer service costs, shipping costs, credit card processing fees, et cetera, right? These guys made an extra $3,000 to $4,000 a month. I'm not sniffing at $3,000 to $4,000. That's real money for a real small business owner. But when you remember that you probably paid about $3,000 a month to the CRO company, all of a sudden, what'd you do? You spent 6 months and your store is on an inflation and profit adjusted basis at the same place you were at before. And that's before we count the inevitable degrade due to the role of novelty. So realistically, this store has spun their wheels for 6 months. They are no closer to a meaningful scale. They are realistically not much closer to being an 8-figure business. And they've spent 6 months times $3,000 a month, $18,000 on a CRO consultant to get them there. Not bashing the CRO, not even saying who they are, but this is not an uncommon story. When I talked to them, I said, you know what? What you should do is take bigger swings. Try radically different offers, radically different landing pages, radically different ways of presenting your product to the market. Because what you have, candidly, at a 2% conversion rate is not resonating with your target audience. So forget the statistical significance, forget the rigid A/B testing, forget all of it. You are a small business, you should be taking big swings. Because when you hit product market fit, your conversion rate is going to take off. It's not going to go from 2 to 2.5, it's going to go from 2 to 5. So that's what they did. And they started testing crazy landing, like absolute crazy stuff. But after just a couple tests, right, 2 tests, so we haven't even gotten to a significant portion yet, they hit on a landing page design that bumped up their conversion rate from 2 to 3.25%. And then after that, they've continued to improve and they're going up. But in a month, they went from 83K to 135K in revenue. That for $0, so no 6 months, 1 month, time reduced by 83%, revenue up 52.1%, all from trying a crazy thing and saying, we don't care about statistical significance, we don't care about valid tests, what we care about is impact. And we need things that are going to move the needle and help us get to the level of growth that we have set for ourselves and that we need for ourselves, regardless of whether or not this test meets the criteria for publication, is statistically significant, or even tells us which specific element resulted in the change. Because candidly, who cares? Who cares if it was the button or the image or the presentation or the header? Who cares? Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is understand, number one, what was the big picture? Where did we come from and where did we go? And number two, if we repeat these kind of steps, can we isolate the change later? Sure, maybe. But fundamentally, it's a lot easier to look back once you're an 8-figure business and say, oh geez, I don't even know how we got here, than it is to be at 7 figures and stuck here, twiddling your thumbs, trying to get to the next level of growth. Because at the end of the day, it's just easier to focus on the things that will make you more money. And if that means we have to say meh to statistical significance, then say goodbye. If it means that we have to reject putting together a case study worthy A/B test in order to get a actual bona fide growth improvement, fantastic. Sometimes the best way to run A/B tests is to reject A/B tests and just take big swings until you hit on something that really starts to knock it out of the park. Then you can start doing a little more incremental stuff, because once you do that, you might actually be on this mountain and then you want to climb up it a little higher. But the only way you will be sure you're on this mountain is if you are willing to jump from 1 to 1. And that means saying no to these incremental tests and yes to more big swing tests. So the next time you open up your ad account or you start to think about A/B testing, I hope you remember this and you think to yourself, you know what, we're gonna try some big swings because it just might pay off. Talk to you next week.